Back on your Selection Sunday special as the selections have been made, and here's how we parse it by conference. Big 12 leading the way with 8 selections, SEC matching that number. The Big 10 historically a first weekend conference, lot in but not many move on, 6, along with the Mountain West, but maybe most notably the Big East, just 3 teams, which turns our attention to our last 4 in and our first 4 out, and not even there do you see St. John's. Plenty of reaction coming due to that news. Let's hear from Coach Rick Pitino after the decision.
With 32 in the net. Well, first of all, I think we all should probably never mention that word again because I think it's fraudulent. You know, my son was 25 in the net, and he was saying he wasn't in with 25 wins. So I think the net's something that shouldn't even be mentioned anymore. We had a good strength of schedule. Ken Palm, why mention him? We were 26 in Ken Palm. So I don't know. It's we tried to play a tough schedule. We tried to do things the right way, and we didn't get in. But, you know, I never make excuses. I respect the committee for what they do. They give their time. They give their energy to it. They didn't think that we measured up to their standards, and we'll take it very positively like men and move forward. We're not going to gripe. We're not going to say we got screwed. We're not going to. None of that helps. Bitterness does not help. I've had enough bitterness in my life to last a lifetime.
I think the analytics are right. Yeah. I think you could schedule bad teams in your non-league and beat the snot out of them and beat them by 50 and 60. And I think coaching for so long, it's been a gentleman agreement. I mean, you have a large lead at the end of the game. You know, for health reasons, you take guys out. To get some other guys opportunities to play, you take guys out. But right now, it might be a change in college basketball. Where beating teams by 40, scheduling to beat teams by 40 and 50 might be a thing to do.
Back in studio with the guys as we hear a reaction from a couple head coaches whose programs did not make the dance, and 2 different tones, 2 different tenors in reaction to that news. As you look at Providence, you look at St. John's, Matt, who's got the bigger gripe, or does either?
I would say St. John's has the bigger gripe. St. John's was considered the team that was more likely to make it into the NCAA tournament. I was surprised St. John's wasn't in. We now know that had it been able to, I mean, I think it wasn't even in the first 4 out. If St. John's had been able to beat UConn, maybe that would have been enough to get him over the edge. But this did seem like, to me, looking at the bracket, looking at, we now have the overall seed list, 1 to 68, it felt like a conference tournament play did not carry a lot of influence. And I'm not saying that it should. Again, we're talking about sometimes 1, 2, 3 data points out of 31 or 32 or 33. So it's important to keep that in mind. But I will say this with what Kim English just said there. It is so much easier said than done to just schedule bad teams and beat them by 35. If it was that easy, you'd see it happen all the time, and there is a big risk in that, by the way. If there are coaches that actually, in power conferences, that think that because the Big 12 kind of gassed itself up, and I'll also know that Oklahoma's not in the field, and it did this, so it's not like there wasn't, you know, some fallout from this. If you think you're going to be able to schedule teams that are sub 250 and you're going to beat all of those teams by 25-plus points and gas up your numbers, it doesn't work like that, and it will have a serious backlash effect. Pitt did not get in the tournament because of that very thing. Had a terrible non-con. It didn't destroy its non-conference opponents that were really bad. Pitt's not in the field. So I understand in the immediacy of this, and I talked to Kim English after they both won and lost in the Big East tournament, and he was hopeful they would get in. I wasn't convinced there. At the top of its resume, Providence 6 quad 1 wins had as good of a selling point as anyone, but all of these resumes had things that were pulling away from them. Plus, we didn't get an answer to this yet, but they don't have Bryce Hopkins. They're not as strong now as they once were. They were good without him. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that should be held against them, but Providence was a vexing case, and like St. John's, it wasn't even in the first 4 out.
Well, and this is the gripe that people have about college basketball, right? It's quad 1 wins or net. What is it going to be? Because St. John's net was 32. No team in the top 32 had ever missed the tournament. Rick Pitino's sitting at home. What do I tell my kids when we turn it around after I go on this rant that I'm saying this is the most miserable time of my life, and then you run off into the tournament, into the Big East tournament, and you play well. And then look, Kim English has a great gripe. Analytics are BS sometimes, because analytics are BS in baseball, and sometimes analytics are BS in college basketball. So I get his gripe. I get what it is.
There's a simple
and you
answer.
have to win your conference tournament. I get it. But when you see teams like Virginia and you see some of these like
Virginia's
Colorado getting in, I just think that there's an argument. There's an argument to be had for St. John's to be in.
There's an answer. Expand the tournament.
No,
it's a
but
that's the easy way.
The answer. That's not the answer.
Is it going to happen?
Probably.
I certainly hope not. I certainly hope not. But that's not the answer. And
it's definitely
everything does.
Absolutely.
We haven't even played a 12-team college football playoff, and we're already expanding to 14.
Yeah.
Of course, there's going to be expansion.
So it's going to be cured. Indiana State not getting in. Eyeball test. They're better than all the teams that.
That's also an issue.
But I'll also say this: like, this is a fun debate to have here the night of the bracket, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to podcast about it. Ion College Basketball Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. We're going to go into that as well. But once we get to Tuesday morning, we want to care about the matchups that are actually out there, and the fact that this was a competitive. I like that it should be hard to get in this tournament. The fact that you've got Virginia in. To me, I'm looking at the metrics right now, and a lot of this was resume-based, strength of record, which is good for the teams that got in. You're not going to find one answer, and here's the reason why. Because you got 10, 12 people that are in that committee room, and they are each valuing different things. So, for example, St. John's not even being close. There could have been 2 people on that committee room that thought St. John should have been a 10 seed, and they voted them accordingly. But then you would have had 5 people that said, no. What I'm seeing here, the data, I don't believe that's the case. It is a blend. There is no one single metric. I don't agree with Kim English. The metrics aren't BS. That's not accurate. We have proven data. This is actually objectively being able to tell us which teams are good. You are trying to split what you have actually done and accomplished versus what predictive say how good you are. The resume stuff almost always wins out in that situation here. And with the teams that did get in, I think that won out. The one that does surprise me is Virginia, because you have a long-standing basis with committee. The eye test, if it gets close, Virginia high on the T-ball ranking, okay?
Right.
They have not
That's
been
what I'm
good.
trying to say here.
The fact that Virginia
it should be St. John's in, not Virginia.
No. There should be one team in. It's Indiana State.
Yes. I'll agree with you on that.
Here's what I'll say about all the rest of those teams. All the rest of those teams have plenty of opportunities, Joe. You know what Indiana State does not have? Opportunities. No one wants to play them. So they lose. They have a great regular season. They break into the top 25.
Yeah.
They have an incredibly high net. They have a star player. They go to the championship game. Drake played outstanding. Drake was blowing them out almost 20 points. They took a lead in the second half. This is an Indiana State team. The NCAA missed the boat. They had a star that they could have promoted.
They had a darling.
They had a team that could have went to a Final Four. That's how good this team was. And the fact that they're sitting at home, I feel awful. By the way, they come from a conference that every single year is dynamite in the Missouri Valley. They got hosed. The NCAA missed the boat. They missed Robbie Avila. He would have been a star in this tournament.
We've dovetailed to some bigger ideas here, and maybe we come back to one, Matt. What's it worth to a conference when you're looking at 8 Big 12 teams or 6 Big 10 teams, or the surprise that we see out of the Big East? Like, what is the net value to a conference at large to see that number in front of them on Selection Sunday?
Well, it means a lot. Well, first of all, it means a lot from a money standpoint, because the more teams you have in, when they win, you get what are known as units, and those go to the rest of the conference there. The more teams you have in, the better chance you have. You got to win the games, though, as well. The Mountain West has had this issue plenty of times in years past when it's had multiple teams and hasn't won any games there. The Big East, it's helped by the fact that UConn's a 1, Marquette's a 2, Creighton's a 3. Those teams, over under, I'd say, 10.5 wins for Big East teams, 9.5 wins for Big East teams in this NCAA tournament, but more bites at the apple, and this should be competitive. Like, it is an impressive thing that the Mountain West was good enough in this league to get 6 bids. I disagree with the fact that they're sending 2 of these teams to Dayton. I think that's an absolute joke, but it's also important to remember this. I can't stress this enough, and if anything, the fact that the Big East only has 3 should reinforce this. When the committee members are picking these teams to make the field, and they are weighing so many different things, and they're looking at all of these resumes, and they're scrolling down, and they're looking at what you've done, who you've beaten, who you've scheduled, it is impossible to say, okay, this team, oh, by the way, they're also in the Big East. Oh, by the way, they're also in the ACC. Oh, by the way, they're also in the Big 12. That is not how it works. There is no conspiracy against one league versus the other, and the fact that you only had 3 Big East teams get in this season tells you all you need to know, because as a reminder, the Big East, second best conference in the country, according to Ken Pom.
3 of the last 4 in teams. Look, the Indiana State had a net of 29. That's a massive gripe. You're right. And you're right. The one answer is to expand.
And by the way, they can't play
make it.
The other teams have opportunities to play. They're like, we have to play. No one will schedule us. We go out. We did what we had to do. And
Expand it to 100, and there's still going to be a last four in and a first four out.
But
There's going to be a line, and the further you push that line,
Absolutely.
yes, the easier it is to talk to those teams.
But for mid-majors, they get hosed because no one will play them. They cannot even build their resume. So we're basically saying if we're the tournament, the mid-majors, good. When you're conference tournaments, or else you have no shot.
Right.
And it's really unfair. And the division is already happening with NIL. Whoever has the money is going to field the best team.
Sure.
But now we're going to watch the Cinderellas. They're going to all end up going away.
No,
Well,
they're not. The thing is, they will not.
No.
And there's too much power in that appeal. I am confident that will not be the case. We see it on the heels of FAU making a Final Four and St. Peter's and FDU.
Well, that's why we watch.
They're not getting rid of it.
We watch for the upsets.
Yes.
We don't necessarily watch for the chalk. We want our brackets
But we
to
won't
win
see,
out.
we won't see Loyola Chicago again. We won't see Final Four.
Why not?
Because they don't even get a chance. Indiana State was that team. They didn't let him in. It's baloney. I don't know what else do you want them to do. Let's take another Power 5.
Loyola Chicago got in by an auto bid though. So like when they did it.
I know, and then if they didn't win their conference, we would have never had the story.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, being a mid-major is always tough. That's just what it is. That's the reality.
I know we got to wrap, but also just keep in mind this was the best bubble maybe ever, and certainly the best bubble in a decade plus. So
but that's because of the bid thieves.
With the bid thieves,
right?
the nature of that. So this is an abnormal year when it comes to all of that as well.
Bid thievery. It's just blame it on that.
Yeah.
Blame it on
Print the
that.
shirts.
Print the shirts.